Welcome back, everyone, to the GMS Magazine podcast or vidcast. If you're actually watching this in YouTube, where you can, watch us both talk about games, which is what we talk about here. And today, though, we're not going to talk about games. Hi, Chris.
Hello, this is Chris from Deus Ex Machina, and we are talking about games and the things that affect games
Yes, and the people who make them.
and the people who make them.
Yeah, screw the people who play them. No, not really. Not really. No, but we love to talk about people who play them and people who make the games because they are amazing. And today, though, we are not going to follow the schedule that we had in mind because I haven't. Well, I could do a couple of piece of news because Free League has already released the Blade Runner RPG and the starter set, and I am really excited about that.
Nice.
And also, Mantic Games are teaming up with Nightfall Games to release the Hellboy RPG, which I am very pleased about because I don't know what on earth happened to it, even though I did a couple of maps for that game as a cartographer. I never got to see either a contributor copy or be able to buy it because, pandemic and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what happened after that because I stopped hearing about it. But now I've heard from Gary Harper and Nightfall, which is a great company because they also have the Terminator game.
Oh, yeah.
And, they have more games. But they are great people. They really are great people. And they're going to continue with the Hellboy, which I thought it was great because it has 2 maps of mine, and that's enough for me, really. So those are my pieces of news. I'm excited about that.
Well, in my little piece of the world, I know that I have in some kind of perverse fascination following the Elder Sign board game.
Mm-hmm.
And a couple things interesting, because it's been a couple weeks since we've talked. And what I find the most fascinating was that they launched it and closed in less than 2 weeks. It was not a month long. I don't even think it was 2 weeks. I think they ran a 10-day game, a campaign.
And I bet it made a few $1 million.
They made 3.2 million euros.
That's not bad for 10 days work. Well, that's not true. 10 days work is kind of unfair. Well, very unfair. But that's not bad for a 10 days campaign. That's impressive.
Yeah, so it's fat. Yeah, I don't know if this is their record. I think maybe one of the other ones might have worked, but I think we're going to see this trend more and more.
Mm-hmm.
I think people are realizing this is how I'm pursuing. Not everyone's gotten the hand. Somebody I know who's another RPG developer just launched a 60-day campaign, which is just suicide. And I knew some people who launched a hot sauce, and it's a great hot sauce, but they launched a 60-day campaign, which was just
that's ridiculous. But you know what? I reckon that there's one reason why people should do shorter and shorter campaigns. And correct me if I'm wrong, you may have a better insight into what I'm about to say, but I reckon that games sell for better profit after the campaign than during the campaign.
Well, their post-campaign, yeah, but more importantly, they realize that, like I said, as many people have observed, 30% of your campaign is raised in the first 48 hours. The remaining 30 or 40% in the last 48 hours, and I've run 4 campaigns in this new age, so I can attest this is exactly the case. And then the remaining 35% is in the interim, but that's getting more and more like that's not the case. It's looking to be almost that only about 20% is raised in the interim. So a lot of people are like, why bother wasting our time on the interim, spending so much money on advertising when we're not generating that much money? If you can because you get that initial surge, the pre-promotional campaign is now getting longer and longer and longer, with some companies running 3 or 4 month pre-promotion campaigns before the launch. Then they have a gigantic first-time launch, and then within 5 or 6 days, you're in your final 3 days campaign. So the fact that, and of course, they knew that was going to happen. That's why they did I don't know how many months of pre-promotion. So they had 20,000 people waiting for the campaign to launch. And so they made $1 million in a day. Boom, done. And I think that's going to be the push going forward, is to start campaigns not blind, but do it with this massive pre-promotion. In fact, that's one of the reasons why I pushed my campaign back when it was a full month, was because I wanted pre-promotion. And now I look at it now, and I should have done a 3-month campaign. My next Kickstarter is going to do a 3-month pre-promotion campaign, and then only run for about 15 days or so, and then just end it. Done. Over quickly. It also prevents the stress. People run the campaign they go through a lot of anxiety, a lot of stress during that time period. I'm myself part of that, and to cut that down to only 2 or 3 weeks instead of a month, trust me, that's the direction I'll be going with the next campaign, and we'll see if it works.
Yeah,
but yeah, 3.2 million euros. I don't know what that is in US.
Well, you know what? Good for them. I hope they really make a great game out of it. I think people who have backed deserve it. So there you go. So those are the bits of news we have. That's some means of very quick introduction, even for our standards. And by the way, listeners and viewers, we're waiting, hopefully, to hear from some people who are going to join us to talk about the hot topic of today, which is a topic I vow to get out of the conversation in social media because it has turned up to be really ugly, and I am interested in being called names or having to deal with people's misinformation so badly. Today we are going to talk about art generated by AI, or images generated by AI, which has got everyone talking about it, plenty of people up in arms, and plenty of people wanting to use it and seeing it as something really cool and promising.
So, like I said, we'll see. Like I said, I was talking to a couple of people, and I'm hoping that they're going to respond back. But like I said, we'll go on proceeding, because I have also done a lot of research, and there's a lot of people talking and a lot of people posting, and right now there are. I'm trying to see how I can put this, because there's several different stances and several positions I'm in, because I'm in 3 different parts of this situation, maybe even 4. The first is that I'm a creator myself. I'm an artist. I don't do visual art. I'm a writer. I do consider that an art form. And my own artistic talents have always been limited, because I've always had issues with my hands, hand-eye coordination. If you look at my handwriting, you can totally believe that's true. But I can do basic sketch work, and that's what I use to sometimes inspire the artists that I pay for, the good artists that take my mangled sketches and words and turn it into a reality. And I have worked with several people, but I'm very, very picky. And I have used one artist. About 95% of my work is done with one artist that we have worked together for about 15 years. He's Nick Greenwood, and he is part of these artists, a large group of artists that are being affected in different ways. I am also a publisher, which means I create books, which means I have to then pay for art. And then finally, I'm a person who runs the artist alleys of not 1, but 2 different conventions. And these are 3 different aspects that are being impacted in different ways. And then you have the different artists that are affected. You have mainstream, fully recognized artists that very often employ physical media and in no way employ electronic medium. Then you have, and I'd say younger artists, I don't mean like 20s, I mean still in my age bracket, that have adopted some electronic or digital elements, but involve some physical aspect as well. And then you have people who are a bit younger, who have been wholly embraced entirely digital, where there is no physical aspect of their medium. And then you have newer people, amateurs, that are just getting into the field, that are using all of their tools, whatever they can, in their work. And these are the people very often you see in Artist Alley. So, and these people are all looking at it and are being affected by it in different ways. So even if we don't get these people on the program, I've talked with all of them, so I do know that this is a painful controversy, because a lot of people are being affected. A lot of people are feeling hurt. A lot of people are wondering what their options are. And this is coming to a point where friendships are being tested, as some people are taking a very, very hardline approach to this. And what's problem for me is that I totally understand why someone would take a knee-jerk hardline reaction, because it's something you're passionate about, and sometimes it's hard to not get triggered in that way. Thankfully, I have not had any vitriol spilled to me specifically.
I have.
But I am only 1 degree off from people who have.
I have, because I dared say in one of my videos, and I will forever stand by what I said, that artists should get to grips with AI and learn to use it, because those artists who do will be at an advantage compared to those artists who do not. That, of course, should be, I should be a bit more specific about it, because there are going to be some artists who are not going to be affected at all by AI, as in at all. But those are going to be the smallest number. And I think the artists who are not going to be affected, and by the way, when I say artists, I'm talking about visual artists. I'm not talking about writers, because that is
this is something that's affecting
different kind of worms altogether.
But we are going to talk about how
artists.
AI has affected the other aspects of artwork. I mean, it's something that's, but this is definitely, we are definitely talking specifically about this aspect.
Yes. So the ones who are not going to be affected by it are going to be the artists who are purely and uniquely physically based. So painters with oil paintings, sculptors with, real life materials, acrylics, collage, that sort of people who create unique artworks are not going to be affected, because they don't make their money, or hopefully they don't need to make their money out of digital sales. They sell their paintings. Even if they are digitized afterwards. I'm thinking, for instance, somebody like Todd Lockwood, who paints traditionally, and he can sell any of his paintings for a ton of money, rightly so. He's probably the greatest fantasy artist alive. And then anything digital is just a bonus, or should be. People like that are not going to be that affected. Anybody who works in the digital field will, one way or another, be affected by this. There's no arguing that at all.
No, the so you're 100% right. Like I said, and I'll expand on that a little bit by talking about the fact that when we're dealing with these artists, you're talking about, because I'll bring up another artist that I do follow. I don't follow Todd Lockwood, but I do follow one of my favorite artists growing up, was a guy named Chris Foss. Thank God that the world is still blessed with his presence. And Chris Foss is very much a physical artist. And he has a YouTube page that his daughter runs, and you can see his process. Now, people who don't know Chris Foss has been a whenever you see any sci-fi art books, sci-fi novels from the 70s or 80s, even in the 90s, if you see any colorful spacecraft, colorful, checkerboard, lights, oranges and yellows, there's a 90% chance that's a Chris Foss. Chris Foss did design work for Jodorowsky's Dune. So if you see any of the color work for Jodorowsky's Dune, that's entirely Chris Foss. Chris Foss did some work for Star Wars. He's technically the guy who originally created the Star Destroyer, because he had the original sketches for that. If you and more recently, if you watch Guardians of the Galaxy, the Star-Lord spacecraft is a Chris Foss design. So Chris Foss has been around for a very long time, and he is a manual painter employing airbrushes and matting and tape. And if you see his work, it's amazing that this late 70s guy still has hands this stable. And so people are like, oh my God, what's going on? Chris Foss probably doesn't even know the AI thing exists yet. And even if he did, I don't think he's going to care, because once again, he does not employ digital elements. He never will. His career is not going to be affected one iota by this. because someone says, what if someone wants to have a Chris Foss painting? They can just get an AI one. No one's going to go, I want to buy a Chris Foss painting and then use an AI to create a painting. They're going to find a Chris Foss painting with his signature and have it on the wall because that's the emotional resonance. I don't know a single person, I can't think of anybody that would pay money to print a Chris Foss AI generated artwork that's not his. And besides the fact that you can purchase prints and stuff from him directly from his site anyway. And yeah, they can get up there in the £400 or £500 range, but you're getting work that's been signed by him. Even if it's a recreation, like a digital recreation, he'll still manually sign it. And the same thing with artists. Then we have also the second category, which are artists have passed on. Giger, Zabinski, which we talked about previously. These guys also are never going to get affected because they have passed on. And there have been some artists that have said, who are very much objecting to AI, that have said, that's okay if they're no longer with us. So some artists have made the caveat saying they shouldn't be training off of living artists, only artists that have passed away, because they can't, you're not taking any money from them. And then, of course, they bring up the point, yeah, but they all have estates.
Yes, I was about to say that, actually. What about their estates? Legally, that work still belongs to somebody. So...
Yeah, that being said, I just saw heard a podcast just yesterday of somebody that rallied and criticized the estates by saying, like, yes, they deserve to have some compensation, but they shouldn't be the gatekeepers of a person's entire work just because they share DNA with that person. Now, I'm not saying that this is correct. I'm just saying this is what this person brought up just yesterday. And they were talking about, and we were talking specifically about the game Scorn. Now, Scorn is a video game.
Wait a second. If I am not mistaken, the state does not necessarily have to be family. It can be an organization.
A legal
that is
entity.
Exactly, that is appointed. So, for instance, the Tolkien state has nothing or not much to do with the Tolkien family, I don't think, for instance.
No, there's a Tolkien descendant that's not part of the Tolkien estate that has very much objected to what's been going on with these
Exactly.
properties.
So it is not necessarily that the state is there to continue profiting. It is there to continue protecting the work of the artist, so nobody can basically, in brackets, desecrate it. So the state is meant to be there to protect the best interests of the legacy of the artists who have departed. So that argument about just because you share some DNA is flawed.
Like I said, but it was interesting, even though this person wasn't talking about AR, they were talking about the video game Scorn, which very, very takes a lot of inspiration from Basinski and Giger. And there have been people saying that these estates should sue, because I go, yeah, but they did not copy any of their artwork. They imitated their style. And a style is not something that can be copyrighted.
Correct.
Because, Pollock developed the drip technique, and how many artists are now employing that technique, right? When the first airbrushes came out, I'm sure somebody patented, but there's a lot of people who use them. And the same thing there are artists that are influenced or inspired, because there are people who are creators, and I won't name any names just at the point, that do believe that if they create something, they wholly own that thing in all its aspects. Which means if someone takes inspiration from that idea and then takes and creates an entirely original idea that was inspired by your work, that original person, some people in that field actually believe that you owe them money even if you took inspiration from their work.
Bullshit.
I 100% agree, but there have been successful legal cases. The most notable one, unfortunately, is a person I very much admire, is, of course, Harlan Ellison. Harlan Ellison, if you admit that you were inspired in any way of his work, he thinks he's owed money. A good example of that is that James Cameron once admitted that The Terminator was inspired by 2 episodes of The Twilight Zone. Now, it should be noted that the Twilight Zone episodes have virtually nothing in common with what The Terminator ended up with. But both those episodes were written by Harlan Ellison, who then sued, got money, and has his name now in the credits for The Terminator. And so this is one of those situations where you have to be very, very careful. When the movie In Time came out, because it had a plot that seemed reminiscent of something Harlan Ellison wrote, he sued them. But then he saw the movie and realized that has absolutely nothing to do with my film. And then he put my story and they pulled the lawsuit. But it's very much a knee-jerk reaction. But musicians, of course, have been doing this for a long time. There's a musical style, somebody imitates it. There's a musical sampling. And of course, back in the 70s and 80s, there was a huge controversy when electronic music started coming out.
Correct.
And a lot of traditional symphonic composers and shooting musicians were very much against this idea of this digital medium recreating violins and bassets and drum and so forth. And a lot of composers wouldn't adopt it. And one of the first persons that did was Jerry Goldsmith, who's an extremely well-established, Oscar-winning, Emmy Award-winning composer who jumped on the bandwagon as early as the mid-'70s when he was doing soundtracks for Logan's Run and other films, and he was employing digital work. And of course, now all music goes through post-production through digital work. The most critically acclaimed artists of our generation, from Hans Zimmer and so forth, they have a piano that's a synthesizer plugged into a gigantic supercomputer, which has samples of music. Now, some artists like Hans Zimmer will go out with a microphone and go to an artist and record their sounds of their music, but a lot of artists don't. They look at a library of pre-recorded musical samples, and then they rejigger them. We already have AI created digital music. There's actually several YouTube pages, one of which has been on the air consistently, like it's running live for about 2.5 years, and it's just a constant AI created music. So it's never the same thing twice, and they've been running that consistently. It's an ambient music, right? And it doesn't require much. So we've already had AI music, which is, once again, with digital music, it's hard to really process that. But we've already gone through these digital birth pains with music. We've gone through these birth pains in other fields, and we will go through these birth pains more in other fields, including writing and other aspects. I was just told recently that one of my scripts that has been commonly shopped around is going into this AI algorithm, and this AI is going to analyze my work and determine its value. Not a human being. An AI is going to judge my script's worth. Now, there's a part of me that's just like, okay, if I get a good score, then I'll be happy, because then people who respect that number, producers and money people, will go, well, this AI gave this script an A+ score. I'm going to take a look at it. But if it gives me a D- score, there's a part of me that's just like, why is my future of my life being determined by an AI? And I just had a conversation, a lot of public posts recently, the fact that I discovered, which I think not a lot of people know, that the entire support echelon of Facebook has been entirely replaced by AI. So much so that even the people in Facebook have to go through them, and they can't. There's this gate that is the AI tech support from which is entirely automated. And the moment I told my human, and I'm not doing air quotes, a real person, my human ad meta rep who handles my advertising, because we were both talking to tech support, and I said to her, I just realized, her name was Stephanie, Stephanie, we're both talking to an AI. It's claiming to be a real person, but look at what they're saying. They are copy-pasting text all the time, and they're repeating themselves. We're getting the exact messages from other people. And I realized, we're not talking to human beings. This is entirely an automated system. And once I called them on their bluff, all of them stopped talking to me. And I realized, yeah, this is a fool's errand. There is no. If you have a tech support problem with a Facebook, you will never ever have it fixed, because it's never going to be seen by a real person. So we see this AI happening, and I am not a person that's like AI is bad. I'm like, an AI is a tool, and we could do with it what we wish. But the important thing I wanted to bring up, of course, for these people who are being very angry, is that with maybe a couple exceptions, no one has ever been able to protest a technological development. They've slowed it. But I don't believe there's ever been a technological development that's ever been wholly, completely, and permanently stopped through protest. About the only example I can think of is human cloning, because they figured out how to do it, and then there was a massive worldwide ban on it. And so far, we are still not to that point of trying to recreate an entire person through cloning. They've gone off in different fields that are related to it, but no one's has admittedly publicly gone down that path of recreating a person through cloning. Like I said, I might be wrong, but I personally can't think of anything from projectionists to different industries that have been retired through technology, and people who throw their wooden shoes into machines to stop them. And that's the term sabotage came about because the shoes were called sabot. And it's very difficult for protests, for people to protest political change, social change, but technological change, I've never seen a protest being able to halt it. Can this be an exception? Maybe. There has been this rising, like I said, you're shaking your head, but I mean, I agree, but I can never 100% predict the future. There is this growing group of people that say, like, there is emotion lacking from art. You can tell. I go, if you can tell, then why did an AI art win a big time art competition in the States? Because they didn't know it was AI. The only way, this is what blew up AI. AI has been around for a long time, but no, it hit the international scene once it won an AI art won a contest when someone proposed it. So yeah, there's a lot of that. So that's kind of the roundabout talking about the environment we're in. And I talked about the one group of people, established artists to do physical medium, that are not being affected. I think when we go to the opposite end, the people who are the most affected are going to be the small-time artists, the ones that rely not on company commissions, but will rely on, I will do a character piece for D&D for $50. I will print some artwork, and then I will go to an event and I will sell my artwork for $25, $50 a pop. These are the people that are going to be affected, because because there's a massive marketplace of people who want characterizations of their player characters from D&D. And they will find people that are $50, $60, $75, and some people have horror stories of situations where they did not get a good result. I've not gone down that route, but I do know quite a few people who have paid artists to create create illustrations of their characters. And now a vast majority of them are like, well, I don't have to deal with this anymore. I can go to an AI, punch in exactly what I want, and then train it until I get to the character that I want to be. These people are going to be wholly affected. And this connects up to the other aspect, because I talked about me being an artist. The other one at the opposite end is Artist Alley. I am running Artist Alley, and I still to this day do not know what our stance is going to be. I honestly don't know. And I don't know what to say to my artists. I haven't asked for their opinions yet. There's a massive group for Artist Alleys in Canada. And if I were to ask them, they say, ban it outright. Absolutely ban it. I guarantee you, without even asking, I know I would get a massive deluge of people saying to ban it. And then my response was, great. Now, how do I tell? Because yes, there are a few telltale signs. If you're really bad at the way you're doing AI art, you can see the fragments of other people's drawing, their signatures sometimes on the piece. That's really poor. But on top of that, there are certain aspects you see that are telltale things to look for. That says, oh, that's clearly AI. If you see a lot of unnecessary busy work, and so you see, like, for example, you see like an animal's mane and the hair's doing something completely unrealistic, you can go, no artist would logically have it do that. Or you look at fingers, because currently Midjourney, which is the leading AI, even the latest version 4, does not know how many fingers a human being has or what fingers look like. So, but a lot of guys get around this by cropping that out, or making sure that the images they're training have that. And the results have been staggering, to the point where someone says, I can tell AI art from artificial. I'm like, no, you can't. If you think you can, you haven't seen what Midjourney is doing. It is freakish. So yeah, so there's that. So because I can say, we will not allow AI art with an Artist Alley. And then I'm like, how do I enforce that? Right? I can look at an artist and go, these artworks are amazing. And then I look at their work from 2 years ago and I'm like, dude, there's no way this is yours. You must be generating these on AI. But what if somebody like Tom Hodges or artists that I know like Bok Choy or Johnny Cock, who are well-established, fantastic artists that make a crap ton of money in the artist circuit, if they start doing things through AI, I go, well, I know these guys are established. They're talented artists, and they're probably using AI, like you mentioned, as a tool, but not as the crutch. Do I ban them from these conventions? And the answer to the question is, I still don't know. I don't know how do I enforce it? How do I make a stance on it? Do I say temporarily we're banning AI artwork, and if you're caught selling AI artwork, you won't be allowed? This might change as we learn and this technology starts to develop. We start seeing where it goes. But to this point, and I've talked with the guys who run these events, and I still don't know the stance I'm going to take.
I don't know what to say about that, because I don't know what, or if there is a right way to do it, because I don't know. There's so many things to be said about that, and I'm kind of, you've given me an awful lot of information, so I don't know where to start with it. To be perfectly honest, I think firstly, artists. Firstly, they need to become informed. They need to become informed about what is plagiarism. They need to become informed about what is copyright, exploitation rights. I'm seeing too many people who talk about those things, and they have, quite frankly, no clue what they're talking about.
100%.
No idea. They mistake exploitation rights with copyrights all the time. People are mistaking derivative work with plagiarism all the time. People are not understanding that what determines if a work is derivative or a copy is subjective. I think there was a court case in the US as well, where an artist took some photographs from Instagram, literally just took the photos of Instagram, made them very big, and gave them a different frame, but also an Instagram frame, but different frame. People sued them because how dare you using my images? And yet the courts determined that the resulting work was sufficiently different from the original to be considered a new piece of work.
Yeah, and we're seeing the same thing. Once again, going to Artist Alley, several people have been banned because the rule is, from Artist Alleys in general, is that if you draw Deadpool, for example, you're not infringing on any one artist's copyright. You may be infringing on Marvel's and Disney's by using their character. The only issue is that Marvel and Disney have never legally gone after any individual artist for selling their characters. In fact, technically, when, say, Todd McFarlane, considered actually the world's most famous comic book artist, one of them famous living today, if he sells his artwork of Spider-Man, technically he's violating copyright because he's selling a character he doesn't belong to, even though he owns the illustration. And the thing is that there is an unofficial agreement that if you're paid by a company to do illustrations for their characters, you can sell the illustrations you made for a profit at these Artist Alley. So Diana Greenhalgh, who's a friend of mine, if you ever see the image of Deadpool sniffing the two barrels of his gun, which was literally copied in the movie, that's an illustration that was created by Diana Greenhalgh. And she doesn't own Deadpool, but she can actually claim copyright on that specific image of Deadpool with the two pistols. And so other artists, imitators that are trying to make money off of Artist Alley in perhaps less nefarious ways, some of them will take that artwork, put it through a Photoshop filter, and then sell it as their own. Or they'll trace it and they'll do it their own way. Or directly just sell that piece of artwork. And those people have been sued. They have been banned from Artist Alley because of these violations. If you want to draw certain characters, you can, but you can't specifically copy another specific illustration. And there's been talk about like what accounts, as you said, as an interpretive work, as a work that has been interpreted by someone else. And the moment you say that these are wholly new artwork, then once again, these people going after the AI are like, well, you're training them off of our artwork. I go, yeah, but there is nothing currently in legal, just unfortunately, because legal law doesn't keep up with anything. There's nothing within legal law that says that, like, because if I'm an artist and I look at Chris Foss, I go, I love Chris Foss. I'm going to create an image that's inspired, completely original design, but it's made to look like it. The spaceships in the video game series Homeworld are all inspired by Chris Foss designs without being Chris Foss designs. Chris Foss has not sued them because outside of using his color palette and the way he flamboyantly paints it, that's his style. So we are doing the same thing. We're taking other people's ideas and then we're learning from these artists and creating some of our own styles. And AI is doing it, but it's doing it in an electronic fashion. And people are objecting to the idea like, well, you can't take my art and put it into a computer. I go, a problem is there's nothing in copyright laws that says if somebody learns from your artwork and paints something, what's the difference between that and an AI learning from it and trying to recreate it? And the problem is that currently, and people are trying to sue Midjourney by like, you can't do this without permission. It's not a lot legal. I don't think you really understand how legal law works.
It's more complicated than that. It's way more complicated than that because it's not just a matter of how legal law works. It's where it works. It's the fact that people don't realize this. When we upload a video to YouTube, we own the video that we have in our computers, but YouTube owns the video that we have uploaded. That file belongs to them. When we upload a photograph to Facebook, that new file that Facebook creates belongs to them. And they don't have the right to say that that photograph was taken by anyone else, but they have the right to use it however they wish. They can use it for advertising. They can use it for absolutely anything at all they want. And no one can stop them.
You remember the monkey photo, right? From a couple of years back?
Remember?
An adorable monkey or a hominid. I don't know. It wasn't a monkey. Stole an extremely famous photographer's camera and literally managed to take a photo of itself smiling in the camera, and it became world famous.
Correct.
And a lot of people were, making money off of that photo. And so the guy, the photographer, tried to sue these people and took them to court. And the court said, "You didn't take the photo. Photograph. It might be your camera, but you don't own the photos in your camera. If you lend your camera to somebody else and they take the photo, you don't own that artwork. It's the photographer who takes the photo."
Correct.
So technically, the animal owns the photo, and since it's an animal, it's not going to own it. So technically, this image is public domain.
Correct. So that adds a level of complexity because, firstly, let's admit and let's agree that the databases that are collecting these images and all their tags and all the information are doing it without any kind of discrimination. And with discrimination, I mean I feel artists should be entitled to say, I don't want my work to feed an AI. I think they should be entitled to do that. They don't want to. It is like if an artist didn't want to be exhibited at the MoMA or the Guggenheim. Fine. You don't want your work in the Prado Museum? Fine. You're entitled to do that. Why not? It's your work. You should be able to opt out. And they have not been given a choice because it doesn't exist. Until now, the option of not going into an AI to train it has not existed. So these databases have taken all these images. To make matters worse, these databases are meant to be a public service sort of charity thing, which give them a different legal status with different types of protections. And in different countries, they're going to have different outtakes. And the fact is that these AIs are feeding from those images in those countries where doing that, it may be ethically questionable. And I am not saying morally, I'm saying ethically, because fuck the moral sort of aspect of this thing for the time being is just not contemplated. It needs to be contemplated. How? That's to be decided. And this is something else that I'm seeing an awful lot of people saying, oh, if I would take these people to court, I would sue them if I had the means. Well, go ahead. I know not everybody has the means, but I feel that there are plenty of people out there who could get together to sue plenty of companies. And I'm sorry, but this is probably the most unpopular thing, one of the most unpopular things I'm going to say tonight, but you have to get used to the idea that your work is being copied all the time. Even if it is not by an AI, once you upload it to the internet, there is no way you can have 100% control on what's going to happen to that work. You have no way whatsoever to stop somebody from taking your image, copying it, pasting it in Photoshop or wherever, and making something out of it. Digital artists have been doing that since Photoshop allowed you to import an image to create a brush. And sorry, let me just finish this. People have to get used to the idea that if you are going to upload something to the internet, until there is a legal, ethical framework around this, you are doing it at your own risk. And you have to get over this, because it doesn't matter if it is AI or a human eye, it is going to happen and you cannot stop it. Get over that. Sorry, but that's the way it is.
No, it's good, that's good. I think, like I said, once again, like there's a lot of complexity to this. And for example, talk about inspiration. When I wrote Amethyst, my original RPG back in 2000, I needed artwork. And of course, this was an entirely homebrew free campaign, and I didn't know any artists that wanted to work, and I didn't have no money for a free product. So I went out and I asked artists, hey, can I use this image for this free homebrew campaign I'm doing? I asked about 50, 60 artists. 2 or 3 of them I ended up working with when I went professional, one of which I still work with, which is Nick. Nick came from that group. And all of them but one said yes. One of them said no. Don't know who that is because I forgot who they were. The remaining, about half of them said, you asked? Thank you. Nobody ever asks. They just take. They've gotten so used to seeing it, they just kind of forgot about it. So when the moment somebody asked, they went, thank you so much for asking. They were just like, one guy was just like, I'm going to do some original art for you just because you asked. Like the idea. And the funny thing is, continuing past this, I then had all this artwork that I used, and I did my fiction based off of this, and all these artists knew. To the point that there are Easter eggs. A lot of these artists have their names in the framing fiction. There's a evil wizard named Piotr Radzik. That's the name of an actual artist, and the name has never been changed. Osvaldo Caraballoso is an actual artist. His name's in the framing fiction. Then when I went professional and Nick Greenwood was doing all the original artwork for Amethyst, I gave him all of his artwork and said, these are the images that inspired these locations. And Nick had to take that and create something wholly original, but still fit that same physical description I gave. So I have a description of a robot, and it was based off of this image, and then Nick has to base that image off of this, but he does know what this image looks like. So I have these images that Nick has done, which are clearly heavily inspired by another image, but they're wholly in his style. And if you were to see his version and what it was based on, some of them are like, these are as far apart as the Lord of the Rings is to 9 to 5. Like they are not even in the same genre. And there are some images you're like, well, I can see where the inspiration is. There's originality, but there you can see where it's coming from. And so Nick has done that. And I also think of a really well-known artist named Jim Burns, who has adopted, and Jim Burns has been around since the 60s or 70s. He is another, like Chris Foss, a world-famous artist that has done lots of artwork. He hasn't had the film transition, but he has done 1,000 book covers in his life. He has a Facebook page that he manages, and he's been uploading his AI artwork creations. And they are shockingly in his style and astoundingly very, very cool and interesting and original. And so the question pops up with conversations I've had with some of these people. If you create AI art, and a lot of people in the AI art says you cannot copyright these.
You cannot.
And I go, yes, but once again, talking about what you said about interpretation, what if you generated an AI art based off of a sketch that you gave? Like you did a sketch, you fed it into the AI, you created an image, and then you took that image and then you altered it so it fit your style. Could you not copyright that image? Because you should, because
Yes.
it's now an original artwork.
Yeah,
And
but
this is
that's a different thing. Again, that is a derivative work. That is what coalesces from taking something from artwork from the AI and making it sufficiently different. You mentioned earlier about this image that won a competition. According to the author in brackets, he spent 7 hours tweaking and changing it, and the image that we see is considerably different from what he obtained. So that is why contesting whether that image is AI generated or is an original image is a different kettle of fish altogether. Yes, you're always going to be able to generate an AI image. And please know that I'm trying my best to call them AI images, not AI artwork. I do not believe they are pieces of art. I think they're beautiful images. But today I was talking with a colleague of mine, Luis Burdalos, and he is a doctor in AI. He works. I work for a cybersecurity firm, the second, I think it's the second or the largest cybersecurity firm in my country, and he is leading the AI team. And he's a doctor. He knows, and he said a sentence to me that I really like. Is that an AI does not create and does not conclude; it converges. That is all it does. It is not creating anything, it's converging something based on things that it already knows. That's it. It cannot create something completely new because it cannot start from scratch. It's impossible for an AI to start from scratch. It needs to be fed something.
You have to teach it.
And it needs a database to start with. There's a difference between feeding an AI and teaching an AI. An AI needs to start with a minimum amount of data that it can analyze so it can converge into something else. And the larger that pool of data is, the better it will be able to converge data. And that data will be added, which is why Midjourney is becoming so good so quickly. I mean, Midjourney is being around for about 6 months.
Yeah, the version 4 is kind of insane. It's insane.
It's brutal. It's absolutely brutal. So the thing is that Midjourney is being fed every single day another, I don't know, 100,000, 200,000 images that people are
and sometimes
creating.
They're itself. It's feeding its own images back into itself.
Exactly. So out of those images, Midjourney probably has literally a million images that it has generated that is learning from. Simple as. And so is dall-e, unstable diffusion, and so on and so forth. Do you know, by the way, that there is an AI called unstable diffusion?
I know that one very well.
Okay. I'm not going to ask how you know that very well. I only know its existence. I don't know it very well. But
I have an artist friend that actually bought a private unstable diffusion AI, and so it's completely blank. He's had to feed it. It's his own artwork to it, and so he's feeding it independently.
Wait a second. I'm not talking about stable diffusion.
Oh, okay.
I'm talking about unstable diffusion.
All right, then maybe that I don't know.
No. Unstable diffusion is an AI that's out there to generate porn.
Oh, okay.
Exactly. So
never mind then.
That's how you know you've made it, when you have a porn site made after you. So that's it converges. So it is not AI artwork, it's AI imagery. Full stop. And and I don't think anybody's going to be able to convince me. That's why I don't believe that there are AI artists. That's it. There are AI whisperers, prompters, handlers. I don't know what the name is going to become, but I don't believe that the person entering a prompt in an AI, that is art.
That's on Kickstarter right now as we're talking. Unstable diffusion's on Kickstarter.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, 26 days to go, 664 backers. Their goal was 34,000. They're at 63,000 Canadian.
There you go.
So that's so timely you bring that up.
There you go. So so that's one thing I think we need to keep in mind. The other thing that is I'm really struggling with this. People against it, there are two main camps. But the most vociferous, and I'm even going to say vicious, are the ones who are fighting to stop AI thing altogether. You know,
They hate the whole blanket.
Thing.
The whole, yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm going to say something again very controversial. Those are the most naive and stupid, because make no freaking mistake. It doesn't matter how hard you try. It doesn't matter what you do. AI is not going to go anywhere. Period. AI generated imagery ain't gonna go anywhere. It's gonna get better and better and better. And I'll tell you something again controversial, not just because of Midjourney and the beautiful imagery that it can create and so on and so forth, but because it can be used for crime. Deepfake is going to be one of the hardest crimes to detect in the next couple of decades. My company is starting, one of the things that it's doing is actually starting the whole department so we can try and learn how to detect attacks to AIs, because AIs can be biased. If you throw enough attacks to an AI, it will skew the learning to where you want.
Yeah, so we've seen it happen publicly with certain algorithms.
Correct. So imagine that with an AI that can create an image of you. I saw a TikToker recently explaining how she's been using AI-generated work, as in AI-generated portraits of somebody who doesn't exist, with an AI-generated background of her being replaced by a figure made with the images of this man that she created, using a voice done by AI from her own voice and her text. And she's been doing that for months.
Yeah. Like I said, there's a website. Yeah, there's a website that's called "This Person Does Not Exist," which creates photos of people, and they're not like, "Oh, this is." I can tell. Like, you can't. These are photos of people that have been generated by computer.
Correct, but like the difference is that those are procedural and not AI generated. So you cannot enter a prompt in there to create a specific image of a specific person that doesn't exist. You simply tell it, give me this, and it's just going to create, it's going to congeal a few things kind of randomly or semi-randomly. So it's slightly different. So again, if people fighting to stop this, ain't going to happen. So I believe it does need an awful lot of work on the ethical framework. And know the fact, because this is something that somebody told me, the fact that AI-generated images cannot be copyrighted, that is not an ethics issue. That is a commercial issue. The reason it cannot be copyrighted is not because it's been done using somebody else's work. It's because it's been done by a machine. So it wouldn't matter if it's just fed public domain images or people who have decided to donate their images to AI or even buy their own images. They cannot be copyrighted because they are built by machines, and machines cannot hold copyright, period. That is not an ethical frame. An ethical frame would involve asking for permission. An ethical frame would involve us being able to opt out. An ethical frame would involve receiving credit when your images are being used. None of that right now has been defined. And I don't think it will be defined for a while.
Yeah.
That is going to take some time.
So my final point involves two things which I wanted to get out real quickly. One is that there is a Midjourney Facebook group, and the Midjourney Facebook group is populated by a lot of people posting images. And the one thing I noticed, and there's a very interesting pattern, is that nobody has posted anything where someone says, you are clearly stealing this person's style or this person's idea. The direction these artists, these people have been going, there has been this rising trend to recreate things that don't exist in any capacity. Because version 4 of Midjourney can actually recreate pretty close, about 90% a photographic idea. They've been using that to mix mash genres to pitch alternative universes that things that don't exist. And for example, the big one has been, here is people don't, and a lot of people, their text, they explain it as if it's actually real. They'll say, by the way, you didn't know that Ed Wood once tried to direct Star Wars. And then there's this whole sequence of still photos of a film shoot that does not exist in the style of Ed Wood, Plan 9 from Outer Space, who did Star Wars. The one that got my attention was Wes Anderson, who is a very famous director with a very obvious visual style. Royal Tenenbaums and a bunch of other films he's done, Dejarge Limited. And this one was Wes Anderson had once directed Alien. And there are these weirdly bizarre, surrealist images. You were like, oh, yeah, Alexander Jodorowsky once, actually did direct Dune. We don't know about it. And then there's all these frames of actors in scenes for films that don't exist. Now, this is something that is astoundingly creative, and you cannot generate these images without a crap ton of pre-work and post-work. You can't just go Alien Wes Anderson and get 15 images, because you're just going to get junk. This is an intelligent, creative mind using the AI to do something unbelievably interesting and original. And whenever I talk about like, this is a horrible system, I go, yeah, but what I see these guys creating is so fascinating. I tried to do the same thing. I mentioned this game Scorn. I fed screenshots of my gameplay of Scorn and said, create new Scorn screenshots. And I created new game scenes from a game that does not exist. Like I said, people don't realize that they've greenlit Scorn 2. Here are some screenshots from the game. And it looks like a completely screenshots from a video game that doesn't exist. The second thing I wanted to bring up is, of course, is the final point, which is me as a publisher. Because I'm in a completely, that takes me out of the creative sympathy, and I'm still a sympathetic person, but now there's a part of me that goes, okay, let's look at the economics of someone who has to pay for art. And then a lot of people was like, there's going to be like, and this is one of the largest economies in the artist area, not Artist Alley, not comic books. It is in all of the artwork for video games, role-playing games, and stuff like that. These big books, role-playing games are a big one, board games. And so far, there hasn't been a mass adoption for AI art in these industries. But the point is, there will be, and the conversation that's going to happen is there's twofold. And this comes to the whole point of piracy, which I've been affected to. There was once a time where somebody told me that my RPGs were being distributed illegally on this site. I went on there and I put my hat in the hand and said, I live in a basement. This is my work. I'm not going to stop you guys from pirating because I know I can't. I just want you to know who I am. And if you do pirate it, and if you do like it, please consider supporting me. Then one of my other publisher friends, he said, oh, you're being good cop. Let me be bad cop. And seeing the vitriol that he got, like all the hate he got from people that says, I'm going to pirate your game out of spite. And people are looking at me going, I'm going out to buy your book now because you put your hat in your hand. And he said, look, this is going to happen. And there have been properties, movies that actually became more popular because of piracy, because more people got to see this work. But the piracy argument always comes down to one thing. Piracy takes money out of this person's hand. And then the vast counter argument is, you're not taking any money out of my hands. I was never giving you money to begin with. And this has always been the biggest, the big push and pushback between people who hate piracy and people who say, look, we're not taking money from you. You never would have received this money. Yes, there's going to be a demographic of people that say, if I can do it without paying for it, I will. And I know those people, I've talked to those people. But when talking to a larger group of people, I've been talking to these people for decades. The vast majority are part of that category of people who pirate just because they can't afford it and they're not paying that money anyway, and they want to see it. In some situations for me, in my past, The only time I ever watched a movie that can be considered sort of somewhat illegal is because the movie never opened up where I am. Like Equilibrium was a film that I admit that I pirated, but that's because Equilibrium didn't open in my theaters. I couldn't see it. When it came out on DVD, I bought it. Right? My conscience is clean in that capacity. But we know that the fact that when we look at artists, and then you can have publishers like these artists are going to say, and they are saying that these companies are just going to get AI art so they don't have to pay art, because art budgets are oftentimes they are the largest portion of your budget of a book. In an art book, the artwork of an RPG is more expensive than the words. It's kind of stupid. It's somewhat unfair, but it's true. If you look at a D&D book, the words were cheaper than the artwork in that book.
Considerably cheaper. I have spent 1,800 euros in artwork for a book that cost me about 500 euros to produce in typing.
Yeah. And so it's hard for a publisher who has to then spend money to go that direction. And so there's two directions. I'm a person that has money that I do budget for books. So the newest Amethyst has a $10,000 art budget. I had this conversation with my artist in Greenwood yesterday. I said it had a $10,000 budget before AI artwork, and it has a $10,000 budget now. You're going to get that money, but now we need to have a conversation on if we employ this tool for you to do more artwork than you could, because oddly enough, my problem with some artwork has never been this is not to my quality or this is too expensive. My number one problem is I never get enough in my budget. Meaning I say I have 3 months to get this artwork. I can never get the artwork in time. I always get half as much. And like the last two projects I did with Nick, it was not a part of money. I had to bring on other artists because he could not handle the workload in the time period. So I go, look, I need this amount of artwork done in 6 months. If you employ AI and you do it your way, which is creating a sketch, scanning it, taking the end result, post-production process to create an original image, and that saves you 2 or 3 hours off your timetable, suddenly I can get more artwork for more bang for my buck. And that's where I think a lot of RPG publishers are going to go. I don't think any publisher is going to say, we're going to wipe out our $8,000 or $5,000 art budget and do it entirely on AI and just have an AI art director that we pay $50 for to create this artwork. I think what we're going to see is an increased quality of artwork in these RPGs because publishers are paying the same artists they've paid before, probably, hopefully, the same amount of money or close to it, to produce artwork that is now consistent and of a higher quality. But I've also talked with publishers who are on the opposite end. They are doing these RPGs as a hobby. Their budget is $20 per product, and they do things either on Patreon or they publish it for $5 on DriveThruRPG. They have no money for artwork, and so their books often have no illustrations. And so some of them are like, "Oh no, I'm going to use AI artwork because I get to put really amazing illustrations in my games now." And someone says, "You're stealing from artists." I'm like, "No, I'm not. There is no money for this artwork." And their argument is like, if you can't afford it, then you shouldn't have it. But
that's a horrible thing.
As I just mentioned with the piracy campaign, that's never been an argument that's ever worked for anyone. If somebody wants something, people. So I should have invited Radzik up here because he's Crapper, Talk Crapper. He's the guy who's been talking about this. He's a game publisher. He used to do the layout of my work, and now I do my own layout because he was says like, I can't do your layout anymore because I'm doing my own books. So I said, no problem. And then I figured out how to do my own layout. And he does his own work, and he's been also in this conversation, and he has no problems using AI artwork. And he has told artists who come after him, like, you were never getting any money. There's no budget for, I have a budget of maybe $50 to $100 per. At best, I could get a low entry-level artist to do 2 illustrations tops. Now I can feed that. I can spend $30 on Midjourney for a month and create dozens of illustrations that fit this style. And he's okay with it. If he says, look, I know I'm not modifying these that much. I know these images aren't copyright. I don't care. The point is, at the end of the day, it makes my product look better. So in the end, when it comes to a lot of artists that are going to complain about that they're not going to make money out of the publishers of these products. Like I said, I don't think you're going to lose as much money as you think. At least from mid and top tiers, there is a certain political or social idea where Wizards of the Coast will never go full AI. There's too much of a social stigma, and they got enough of money they can pay for real artwork without worrying about it. And the same thing with mid and top tier. Yes, we could see some smaller tier and some mid-tier publishers saving money and adopting AI artwork. But I think the people who are going to be the most affected are the people who rely on Artist Alley and small commissions to make their money. Those are the people that I worry about.
But the thing is, you say about Wizards not going into so and so, and these people not going into. We are never going to know. That is the end of it.
That's ultimately that was what I was talking about earlier about the Artist Alley. How do I enforce it?
We are never going to know if any of the illustrations in any of the books that we're going to see from now on has been in any way, shape, or form influenced, generated, or somehow participated by AI work. So going against it, I've seen people saying, no, my company will only feature 100% created human work. You're not going to know. Also, you are gatekeeping artists who cannot make art otherwise. I have a friend, my friend Jason, who's got arthritis in his hands. He's been an illustrator for most of his life. He's got arthritis. He can no longer paint as he used to. He is using AI and Photoshop to start again, to learn again, to create illustrations again, so he can keep making a living as an illustrator. And there are people out there who want to take money from him. Funnily enough, they want to literally take money from him. I've had somebody telling me that those artists who use AI work should be rightfully stigmatized because of the fact that they're using work generated by stealing images from others. And they should be rightly stigmatized. Which I thought, holy fuck. I am not going to tell you what you sound like.
Yeah.
But I think we all know what you sound like. So
right, yeah, the lightest term is gatekeeping. You're trying to stop people from entering your industry by telling them how they're doing that is wrong. Hell, there are some people who have. I used to get criticism. This is a long time ago. The fact that I used a word processor.
Exactly.
Why are you using like I use Grammarly, which is an AI grammar checker. It's the most well known on the market. I use Microsoft Word, and people are, and I have tremendous respect for, like, once again, going back to Harlan Ellison, who would take an idea, a sentence from a random sentence from somebody, sit in a shop window with a typewriter, type out a page of a story, then tape that page to the window and then write. Like, no computer, no word processing. And once he posts a page, he can't go back and change something. That's insane. But no, not everyone can do that. I'm a person that can't do that. And one of the issues is that I have ADHD. I'll go on a tangent and go, nope, and just delete the whole line. And Grammarly catches me on making mistakes, amateur mistakes that I sometimes make. So I live off of that. And someone might say, you're not a real author because you rely on Grammarly.
Fuck that.
And then well-known artists and some authors have said, I can't remember which the author was, and so because somebody was making that same complaint online, and a well-known author, could have been Stephen King actually, said, "You have no idea how bad my books are until my editors had a hand in it."
Correct.
The joke is that a book is written twice, once by the author, and then it gets fixed by the editor. Grammarly,
and sometimes thrice if you need to translate it.
Exactly my point. So, like I said, and the funny thing is that if you've been checking my background, everything you're seeing is AI art that I have created.
That's the thing. How could anyone say that is AI or it isn't?
Yeah.
So
it's especially bad with anything that's scenery. Like, people Some of the people, some of the older people, you can see, like, oh yeah, I can, especially if their hands are visible. But scenery,
It's incredible.
good luck trying to see if whether or not these are fake or real.
It's incredible. And if you take more than one of those, mix them together, do something with them, how is anyone ever going to know? So trying to gatekeep and say, oh, my art, the company that I use, only human generated work. I'm sorry, you're being naive. You're being naive because AI is going to get so good that you will never ever know unless you receive an envelope or a box with the hand painted images that then you can use in your books. Otherwise, you will never know. That is a fact. I'm sorry, but that is a fact. So that's why I don't think that any other approach other than let's see what I can do with this to make my work better is going to be productive. And again, if you're an artist who do things by hand, then you don't need it. I have a friend, my absolutely wonderful Rhonda Libby. She's just amazing, and she creates the most stunning imagery with gold gilded paintings. And she's pretty upset because her style is being used by AI, and she has seen images that use her style. And she's pretty upset about that. But you know what? She's the kind of artist, she's incredible enough that she can sell her paintings for $2,000, $3,000, $4,000. That's how good she is. So I'm a bit, okay, I understand that you would want to have to opt in. I think that it's amazing, and you should be able to opt in and opt out if you don't want your style to be copied. But you're not going to be affected. Your paintings, your sales will not be affected. I hope at least I really hope you want, because she's a friend and I love her. So
yeah, Nick and I, for example, Nick and I had this conversation, and he was receptive to the idea of employing AI as a tool. And I went through and showed him all the images that I created, and he was astounded, and he was impressed and excited. I didn't catch him being scared or worried, because he knows perfectly well. It's like, look, no, you're getting this money, and but. It's interesting when I say I used to send him artists going, I want an illustration that looks kind of like this artist illustration because this is the illustration that inspired me. Now I can go see this AI artwork I generated. This is kind of what I want. And so if he wants, he can generate a new artwork based around that. And he's not inspired by anybody because now he's inspired by an AI generated image.
I have been creating mood boards for projects that I've been working on for decades. What's the difference between me creating a collage out of stock photography or somebody creating a concept out of a Mid-Journey image or a dall-e image or a stable diffusion image? That's just the way it is. And yes, I agree, because people seem to believe that just because a thing is a tool that it's not going to go anywhere. I don't think there are ethical considerations. Yes, there are ethical considerations. Yes, there are unethical ways of using this thing. Yes, it's sourcing work in a non-ethical way. Yes, I get all that. All of that. But again, it's going nowhere. Ever. Yeah. It is being the entry point for an awful lot of small publishers who now, by the way, are going to be really petrified. I know some people who are going to be really petrified that if they use AI work, they are going to be vilified, ostracized, and their business is going to suffer. And you know what? Fuck anybody and everybody who decides to do that to a small publisher who depends on AI to be able to have any kind of work, because otherwise they wouldn't be able to do it. Screw that. Screw that. Because, as I said in the past, if the option is having no artwork or AI generating work, that is not an option. You go for the AI generated work. And if companies are, oh my God, but then people are going to be able to create something great with very few requirements so I can do the same, congratulations. Your absolutely amazing book that you could have illustrated incredibly now is going to look like this cheap $10 or $2 PDF from somebody who's just published their own thing. Great. You just put yourself at the same level. How clever of you, because you decided to use just AI. Like somebody who can't afford anything else.
Yeah,
But
it allows independent small time publishers to try to create product that can compete with Wizards of the Coast, and people can go, now I don't have to worry. I can give money to smaller companies, and they're not producing crap, because at the end of the day, and the thing is, we're already reaching the point where there are companies that are generating AI dungeons
correct.
for role playing games.
Yeah.
There's already a Patreon that produces AI generated one shot adventures. And we will see, like I said, in my lifetime, an AI will make a Harry Potter successful novel. It's going to happen.
Not in your lifetime. Make no mistake, that will happen in the next decade.
I know. Well, hopefully I'll live that long.
In the next decade, we are going to see, seriously.
It won't be in your lifetime. It'll be the next decade. I go, how long do you think I'm going to live, Paco?
No, I hope more than that. That's what I'm saying.
More than a decade.
But what I'm saying is that
10 years should be in my lifetime.
That thing is really close. We are already seeing there are AI prototypes that can create a 3D full mesh, a polygon mesh, a 3D object using a prompt. There are AIs that can create a video, a moving video using a prompt with reasonable results, considering that they are really brand new. We're seeing all these things already. In a decade, AI is going to be ubiquitous. And don't get me wrong, okay, AI is going to fuck up an awful lot of people. AI is going to be to the world of art, to the world of writing, to the world of human resources, to the world of economy, to absolutely everything.
Yeah, it upset production. It upset production 50 years ago, and it'll upset,
to what digital photography was to chemical photography.
Yeah.
That's it. I have been into photography.
I ran a photo lab, and my photo lab went under when digital cameras started coming in.
Correct.
We had we had 5 years of business as people were still printing, but once everything went electronic, like no one was printing physical photo albums anymore, my industry went from, we were doing 75 rolls of film a day, a week, I'd say 75 rolls of film a week, to 10 or 12 a week until they finally shuttered my department. And yeah, people lost their jobs. Where is the massive social outcry that occurred when where photo labs across the entire planet went under?
Exactly. It didn't happen. And I'm going to be even more brutal about it. And you know what? Now we have way better and a lot more photography than we used to have in the past.
99% of all artwork ever produced in the history of mankind has been taken in the last 5 years.
So I'm sorry. What can I say? Yes, there are teething problems. Yes, I wish they didn't exist. Yes, I hope they become as painless as possible. But yes, some people are going to suffer. That is completely inevitable. And in a few years' time, the likelihood is that we will say, okay, this has only been bad for some people. It's not acceptable, but we have to put up with it. I remember in the early noughties, and I think it was 2005, 2006, I was a photographer assistant in London, and I remember having this absolutely amazing guy, really nice fellow, I can't remember his name, who ran a traditional printer, photographic printer, the kind of people who photographers would take their film so he could make the print and make the best print possible in black and white. He was suffering from depression because come Christmas, he literally didn't have enough money to buy a turkey because his business.
Well, you couldn't buy it
down.
now. Have you seen how much turkeys are?
I don't know. I need to order mine.
Turkeys have blown up this year.
Really going down because his business could not be sustained, and he could not, or did not want to, I don't know what the answer is to that, update himself to learn Photoshop and do the same thing with chemical print, with printers, with Epson or whatever printers. He went down, and I know he suffered, and that was really tragic to see, and I bet that there were plenty of people like that. And today there are only a handful of people in the world who do chemical photography.
Yeah, there used to be one in every town in Canada, and now there's 2.
So progress, unfortunately, brings change And change unavoidably means leaving people behind. It sucks. It really sucks. So you know what? Rather than trying to stop this, try to figure out how to make this as painless as possible. And how are you going to help those people who are falling behind? How are you going to actually help those people who don't know what it takes or cannot really come to grips with the technology? How are we going to help those people? Because make no mistake, disgusting as it may be, horrible as it's going to be to witness, that will happen. And I'm sorry, but fighting against this is tantamount to doing nothing. Because it ain't going to work. It's just not going to work.
On a completely related note, my latest book, Amethyst, every time I do one of these RPGs, I create a 1 or 2 new races based off of existing animals. My first book, I had bear people. I had possums for the second one, and I was trying to figure out what the third one was. We've just gotten into possession of a pair of dagoos. I don't know if you know what a dago is. Dago is like half the size between a hamster and a chinchilla. Okay. It's more related. It's kind of a hybrid between a chinchilla and a bunny. So it's about yay big. They've got the long teeth. They chew on everything, and they have their own little habitat. I've got 2 little buggers right here beside me. They occupy. They're still getting used to us. We've been able to feed them out of our hands. One is called Digit, and the other one's called Gizmo. Mm-hmm. And a Gizmo is the smarter one. Digit is the asshole. But I have a soft spot for Digit. But of course, once that was decided, I think, well, I've got to have Dagoos be the playable race in the next game. And so I went to Midjourney and I said, give me a fantasy Dago monk. I could not tell you how, like, there are levels of cuteness. Mm-hmm. Take that and amplify it by 1 million. I'm going to see if I can show you one of these, because it took a while to get it there. There were some issues we were having, and then let's see here. Then I got a hang of it. Went through a couple things, and let's see if we can get it. So this guy right here.
Oh my god!
Right.
That's amazing.
Right. It's kind of nuts.
That is just incredible.
It is like, well, I can't wait to have stats for these things. And Nick's been seeing them. He's just like, yeah, I can do something with that. Because it's funny though. You can't see their bottom halves, but they literally have that kind of plump bottom half that hamsters do when they sit upright. Because these guys sit upright all the time. When they sit upright, they have this chunky bottom half. These 2 little upper legs. But yeah, that's gonna happen now. We're gonna have AI generated, or we're gonna have Dagoos in our story, wielding a sword.
That's really amazing.
But anyway, that was all I have to say on that.
Well, I hope to finish, because we've been going at it for nearly an hour and a half now, and it's past 11, and I'm kind of
we definitely got we knew this was going to be.
Yeah. And we will probably have to revisit this at some point and have some guests and see what they think. But I don't know, people, brace yourselves. Seriously, brace yourselves.
Be civilized in the comments.
And for goodness sake, be as objective as you possibly can. I know that this is a very triggering and a really upsetting topic for an awful lot of people, but hurting others, it's just not going to be productive for anyone. And by all means, if you want to unfriend people because of their stance on AI, do. I mean, I've had 2 people unfriending me because of I said that.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's a bit like, okay. So far, no one has been able to give me a counter argument to my people who know how to use AI will be better prepared than people who don't. Argument. Mm-hmm. Everybody's come with, oh, but copyrights. Oh, but this is wrong. Oh, but how yeah, I'm not arguing any of this. Oh, but stealing, I'm not arguing any of that. It's like saying that an engineer who knows how to create tanks will have an advantage on an engineer who does not know how to create tanks. Tanks may be horrible, but the fact is that an engineer who knows how to create them could get a job creating tanks. An engineer who doesn't know how to create them cannot get a job creating tanks. This is the same thing.
Yeah.
This is the same thing. So I'm sorry, but that's the way it goes. So I would normally say, please let me know what you think, but I don't think I'm going to open the comments in the posts that I'm going to have for this episode, because I really cannot be asked to be dealing with people's vitriol and nastiness when it's about this topic. If you think that AI is uncivilized, you should see what people are behaving like, and I am not going to be part of that. Make of it whatever you will. But this is my opinion, and when I see a conversation that's civilized and nuanced, I'll join. Otherwise, I have walls that I have painted recently that I need to watch dry, and I'd rather do that.
Yeah. Like I said, being a creator, a publisher, and a guy who runs Artist Alley, I can't avoid it. I haven't got the vitriol yet, but I am expecting that's going to happen soon.
Well, just, open the conversation in your group, in the artists group, and just wait for the magic to happen.
Wait for the magic to happen. That was a very, very diplomatic way of putting that.
Well, trust me, it is going to happen. So anyway, listeners, viewers, thank you. If you've reached to this point without, bursting a vein in your forehead or something like that, very much appreciated. Please don't let me know what you think. Please.
Yep.
I just don't want to know. I will want to know in a little while when things calm down, but we'll talk about something else next week.
Yeah, and this has been Chris from Deus Ex Machina. You can find me at Deus Ex Machina, although I don't really do Twitter. I am on Facebook, I am on Instagram, and I am on TikTok. But if you subscribe to me on TikTok, you will be hit by Dago videos quite soon. You will have no choice. They are adorable, and so you're going to have to get used to me posting Dago videos.